Alright, enter Cantiva, the response video. See how it goes. Quickie.
So, Inventum says that guilt is a realization followed by a feeling.
Right. So what I said is that basically, yes, you have to have some sort of cognitive activity takes place that allows you to see yourself in some sort of negative way. Or see events in some sort of negative way and see you as part of the failure of those events. So it doesn't matter whether you kind of acknowledge that it wasn't your fault in the sense that you didn't do anything necessarily wrong. You just see how you're connected to it. You see a picture, somebody informs you of information, like somehow you accidentally killed somebody's cat because you threw some bad meat out the back door. You did some kind of stupid thing, or you did something not stupid, but it just went wrong. Things go wrong sometimes. Sometimes you ask your neighbor, they're going to the store, and you ask them to stop. Well, on your way, could you stop at? And when they go into the parking lot of that store, the store blows up and they get horribly burned or something. You're going to feel somehow responsible for the change in their destiny. And you're going to have a sense of it first, a thought, and then you're going to feel. And I guess depending on how vulnerable you are, in terms of how good or bad you already feel about yourself, you're going to have a guilt experience. A guilt experience that will be traumatic, or one that will be, oh, gee, that sucks, but yeah, I really didn't do anything. Couldn't really anticipate it before it happened. Couldn't really do anything to prevent it. I didn't have any control of the circumstance, and I didn't do anything malicious, and so therefore, damn, it sucks, but yeah, I can get over it. And so the things you're not going to get over are the ones that are more your fault, your failure, the ego-based things where you just have to take the humiliating, I'm not alpha, I'm beta, I failed, I didn't win the gold medal, I fucked up, and nobody likes to be a fuck up. And so then you have some sort of guilt that might be harder to live with. Alright, well anyway, didn't mean to do this, what I just did, but it's sort of important. And let's also emphasize, I have explicitly said, as loud as I can say it, not as loud, but loudly, I've said it, straight, my eyes pointed right into the camera, I said it. I see absolutely no value in the emotion of guilt. Emotional responses like that based on your ego satisfaction or dissatisfaction should never be controlling in your behavior or in your function. If you can do it intelligently, through logic and understanding alone, that's always preferable. The sensing, the feeling, emotionalism is more than likely going to get you into trouble. So stay away from it. Yes, that's ideally. But we're not non-emotional monkeys. We're emotional monkeys, and we're going to be emotional. So I'm not saying people shouldn't be emotional. I'm just saying I personally don't suggest it. Can I make that clear? I don't think people should feel guilt. I think guilt is a useless emotion. Of all the emotions, it's the most useless. So yeah, stay away from guilt. It's useless. As an emotion.
Are we to assume that that realization, I shouldn't say is infallible, but shall we say, are we to assume that that realization is valid?
Yeah. Yeah, they're all going to come in different degrees, right? You have different degrees of culpability for something existing. I could say I have a certain degree of responsibility for the enslavement of the Chinese people. I could say I have a certain degree of culpability because of my ancestors for the condition of the Native Americans. I could say the same about blacks in America or some other things. I have a certain degree of responsibility for the circumstances that exist based on what I live on and what I have inherited, so to speak, as a benefactor. All right, what I've had the advantages of, the non-discrimination that I have enjoyed, whatever you could find that would give me a certain amount of culpability for a crime. I put a certain amount of gasoline in the getaway car or some other kind of thing. And some of our crimes are way where we're the primary cause, where we're the proximate cause, that the thing wouldn't have happened without us, and other circumstances where we're not the cause, we're just something that made it possible, but wasn't facilitated, but did not necessitate the outcome. And so, yeah, there's going to be circumstances where we're going to have contextual perspective on the amount of our obligation, our response. And so, yeah, and so what you do about it, the response part, how you compensate for the acknowledgement of the failure or the acknowledgement of the taking, it's an acknowledgement of some sort of, something you've gained at somebody else's expense, and that maybe there is some sort of bill that needs to be paid. And sometimes there isn't any bill. Sometimes you just say, look, there's nothing I can do about it. I didn't create the problem. I didn't do anything. Again, if the calculation is there's nothing I could have known ahead of time beyond the magic powers to do anything about it, well, it can't be blamed on my sloppiness or negligence. But we know there are times when we are sloppy and negligent, and that sometimes you're going to have to pay for that.
In other words, the very fact that you feel guilty about something, is that...
Again, feeling guilty is not the useful part. Understanding responsibility is the useful part. Understanding responsibility. Understanding the cause and effect chain, and understanding circumstances that could have been prevented and circumstances that can't be prevented. The understanding what useful can come from a bad experience, recognizing it as a bad outcome, and then simply saying, well, regardless of my culpability, how do I prevent bad outcomes? Is there something to be learned from this experience? That's constructive guilt, quote unquote, and has nothing to do with feeling guilt. It just has to do with understanding the cause and effect chain that creates circumstances, and understanding that through interactions, through learning, we convey to each other ways of breaking bad chains, so to speak.
That indicate that you have a reason, a real reason to feel guilty?
Again, I said it as clearly as I can, right? I've repeated it. I have no interest in conversation about the feeling of guilt. This doesn't mean anything to me. It doesn't mean anything to me.
If you feel guilty, does that mean you are guilty of that which you feel guilty for?
Taking it further back and just saying, okay, you have learned of a circumstance. Are you beyond? Is your culpability something that needs to be corrected for, or not? So, like my example of where I just say, could you mind stopping at the store for me? So my connection to the disaster is minor, and it wasn't in any way. It wasn't my recklessness. It wasn't sloppy. There was no lack of care or caution. There was no lack of consideration for the person's risk factors. Yes, you knew there was a 1 in a million chance, and you just got unlucky, and the 1 in a million chance came up. So is there anything to be learned from the circumstance? Is there any reason to sit there and say, but there's no point in denying the fact that it wouldn't have happened if I didn't say, could you go to the store for me? I mean, it did happen because of that, but it's not something, there's no constructive response to it. There's no way to fix anything. There's no way to prevent it in the future. So yeah, you learn in that case responsibility and accountability, the best you can do is just say, damn, life sucks, and move on, because you're not going to be able to fix that one. But we know that there's a ton of others where you can fix it. You can not get in your car drunk, where you can not do something sloppy or reckless, where you can vote to protect people's rights, where you can do all these other things, where you can do something constructive, where you can prevent the harm. So there's lots of times the bombs go off and you could have done something in the chain of events to prevent the bomb from going off.
It's just a search for certainty, I think.
Well, it's not a search for certainty. So again, turn it into some kind of bullshit. Like I'm looking for something. I'm not looking for anything. That's just such nonsense. I don't need to go looking. Life is really easy to understand. It's cause and effect. Okay, and we can see that there are causes that you can do something about and causes you can't do anything about. Wow, those two kind of categories. And some major problems can be prevented with minor inconveniences. And we can certainly understand that in terms of the present versus the future. We know the future could be very big, very large, very many people living in it, and a small number of people now do the right thing, and all those people live much better lives. We can certainly know not to piss and shit in their drinking water. We can figure that much out. Come on, I'm not searching for certainty, but I goddamn well know that if I shit in the future's drinking water, they're not going to appreciate it. It's not going to be good for them.
Justify guilt, which, when you look for it, it just isn't there. Guilt is a claim.
Justify guilt. Again, I'm not justifying guilt. Am I? Can I say it? Look, I mean, you people don't like me calling him a liar, but how far does it have to go? How many times do I have to say I have no interest in the emotion of guilt whatsoever? None. I'm not trying to justify an emotion. And what he's saying is that somehow you can't justify somebody recognizing risk equations. That somehow is not a justifiable event. Obliging people to take notice of the fact that they're freaking playing with fire in their yard and they may burn their neighbor's house down. And he's saying it's unjustifiable to impose a sense of responsibility on that individual to recognize the fact that they are playing fire roulette with their neighbor's life.
Except like any other. It's as real as we decide it is.
Well, whatever. No, that's right. We meaning what? If we are selfish assholes, we can evade responsibility. Yes, quite obviously. That's why there's huge national debt all over the place. That's why there's huge credit card bills. That's why 50% of American children are being raised on food stamps. That's why 80% of them don't graduate from high school in Chicago. That's right, because people have evaded responsibility. Okay. There's nothing else to say here, right? This is just not that complicated. I'm not searching for anything. There's no mystery to this simple, rational process of analyzing circumstances and recognizing that outcomes will be dependent on how you play the game. And if you play the game certain ways, lots of pieces will get knocked off the board. You play the game another way, not so many get knocked off the board. That kind of thing. Not complicated. You cook it the right way, it comes out food. You cook it the wrong way, it comes out shit. Not complicated.